Newcastle Town Hall for Monday, October 30th, 2023 to order. All rise to the pledge.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I would like to welcome everybody to the Town Hall in regards to the Newcastle City Police Department. If you grabbed an agenda from the front, we do have some stuff listed on the back. Before speaking, we ask that you state your name for the record, wait for the chair to acknowledge you, address only the governing body when you are speaking, speak from the podium, and please keep the side chatter down so that addressing the governing body are able to be heard. Do not use profanity, and we do ask that you put your cell phones on silent. Well, I want to welcome everyone tonight. We have Councilman Darren Downs, Councilman John Butts, Councilwoman Ann McCauley. We have our City Clerk, Stacy Haggerty. Dublin Hayes is our City Attorney. President of the Council is Don Steeson. We have Councilman Ty Owens and our Chief of Police, Derek Thompson. So tonight's meeting is in regard to some constituents that spoke with one of our council members in regards to dissolving the police department, which we need to hear from the town on what it is that you guys want to see and what you guys want to see what happens, your concerns and statements. If you do want to speak, we ask that you go to the podium. You can line up there and we will go one by one and we can answer any questions or try to answer any questions that you have this evening. Also, please be advised that this is not going to have a motion tonight. It's not going to have a decision tonight. We will rediscuss it at our next council meeting, which is on November 6th at 7 o'clock over by City Hall. Okay? So if anybody has any questions, if you want to go to the podium.
Is it on?
It's on. It's on.
Well, good evening. It's kind of an interesting feeling standing here from the old days, but why I'm here is to, first of all,
State your name.
a prayer to myself.
Mike, introduce yourself.
Lord, may the meditations, may my words out of my mouth and my meditations in my heart be pleasing in your sight, Lord, my rock and my redeemer. So,
Introduce yourself.
I will do that now. My name is Mike Mills. I've been involved in one thing or another in Newcastle for a long time. I wish to say thank you to all of you. Good evening to all of you also. Madam Mayor, I need to ask a question before I get into some points that I want to make. Have you made certain that there are no rotten egg baskets and rotten tomato baskets in this room? Oh, they're taken care of.
We do have a public meeting, town hall meeting that's open to.
Ah, okay, all right. Thank you, Madam Mayor, for speaking out publicly in the last newspaper against this proposal. I'm here to support you 100%. I agree. First, a bit of history. About 30 years ago, we still had wards in our community. And when elections happened, you ran and you were picked. You were elected for that particular ward. That was changed back then because we were having major problems fulfilling and having enough reforms because nobody would run in the wards when they came up for election. So it was changed to where it became essentially elections for members at large. So I want to remind all of you here.
Hold the mic up closer to your mouth.
Hey, pull the mic up to your mouth. Can't hear it very good, Mike.
You can't hear me?
Now, there we go.
There we go. So 30 years ago, the election promotion was changed to a at-large membership representation. So every election that we now have, every one of the people up here represent all of us, not one particular group or another, or ward or group, whatever. So I want to make sure that's clear. Everyone here is elected as members at large. Second thing that I want to touch on briefly, municipal government has been set up to create services for its public and be funded through, in this case, sales tax dollars. There's a little bit more of that, but this is primarily where the funding comes from. It's never, ever been intended to be anything for profit. It is about the profit being reasonable services for the money that was involved to create those things that we all couldn't do for ourselves. They were core services and meant to be that way. It's morphed into other things now, but at that point in time, we all couldn't be our own police force, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So we need to be careful here when we are looking at this, and why I'm opposed to it. I don't want to lose. I'm sorry, all right, you can hear me now? Okay, I'm very sorry. So bottom line here, the point I'm trying to make with this is we are a group of people working together, and our tax dollars, sales tax dollars, are going to fund this city government. I would encourage the council and others not only to listen to people, but listen to what you're not hearing. That advice was given to me a long, long time ago, and it has a lot of value. I believe that the way the system is set up and should be run and is being run, that these kinds of issues should be funneled through and discussed at council meetings, through committee meetings, and then approached with the public. Congratulations, Chief Thompson, on your promotion, sir. Thank you and all your officers for all that you do for us. I've taken some time to look up some things, and just to have you in this community and moving about creates a deterrence. with the way things are going in this world today and in our country, it seems to me that we need you and your men more now than ever. So I am proud to say that I believe that you have a very, very, very valuable service to us. And frankly, the money that is expended to create that is a big deal. I don't want to see everybody in town running around with a pistol on dispensing justice. I think that'd be a little nerve-wracking, to say the least. One more thing, Mayor Galtieri, before I close. I would ask, as we move forward in this process, and if it's parliamentarily correct, and I think you'll find it will be, but make sure that any votes that are taking on in any of this discussion be roll call, not voice. I want to know for me, I'm asking you if we can do this, and for others, who's voting for things and who aren't. Period. A or nay, and their name. I think it's important to know that.
City attorney said that.
Closing, for me, and I speak for myself, I believe that the benefits that we receive from having the system left alone the way it is, and I know there's things that we need to work through and maybe tweak a little here and there and all of that, but that's part of what a council's hired for, or elected to do. Shouldn't say hired, that's dangerous. But anyway, the bottom line here for me, the benefit is far greater for us to leave things alone and far outweigh the costs. I think we're getting our money's worth, and maybe we need to do some things. There's the group that we elected to do it. They ought to be doing it. With that, I close. I hope I haven't run over time. If I have any left, I pass it back to you, Madam Mayor, and thank you again.
Thank you. Anyone else want to come to the podium?
Good evening. Mike Sakaya. I am a relative newcomer here to Newcastle. Moved here a couple of years ago, and it's the first time in 46 years I didn't go anywhere the airports told me to go, so I chose this place. I do have some concerns about the idea of getting rid of our police force. We're a municipality, and being a municipality comes with responsibilities and with benefits. For me, the number one benefit is security. And for me, the number one responsibility is to maintain that security. Our ability to police ourselves is critical for our safety and security. And especially today, I mean, we don't have to go very far to look at what's going on outside of this city. That could eventually present a threat someday. And we have to be ready for that. So because of all that, because of our responsibilities, and because being able to police ourselves is part of what makes us who we are as a city, I support keeping the police. Thank you.
Anybody else? We can line up at the podium if you like.
All right, my name is Jody McCormick. I've lived in Newcastle for 41 years. I'm a teacher at the school. And so I have just a couple questions, things I'm coming and not really knowing. First of all, I'm curious, what are the reasons for considering this change?
handle that. I understand that in the community that sometimes uncomfortable questions have to be asked. And many of my constituents have been coming to me and asking me, about moving the county police in. So, some of the folks that are coming up to the podium, there are a few things that we need to look at, right? We have two entities, one of them that's been having trouble in the recent years, and then we have, what's the matter, man? Oh, okay, well, I'm also elaborating on the point a little bit. Okay, so, yeah, I guess the mayor would like me to summarize my response, but yes, my constituents had come to me with concerns and wanted me to address that with the public about moving forward with going towards county police.
Okay. I'm curious, are both entities trained in the same way? Like, are they both trained through the police academy? Yeah, Douglas, they do all go to, so all of our sheriff's deputies and sheriff's officers or whatever, they're all, okay. So at the school district, we've just recently gone through our training where they come in and we train for active shooters, and we are dependent on somebody to come in and help if that should happen. We're curious, also, would the sheriff's office share a staff member with the school district for that SRO position? So we have somebody in our school right now, and I think they're really needed there. Would that be something that would continue?
I did ask the sheriff about that, and he did say yes to the school resource officer. Also, both this past summer, I believe, both entities did go through a TAC 1 emergency management setup and a practical for in-school shooting. So they did have the training altogether.
If the sheriff's department would take over, would they absorb the staff that's part of the police department? And you would just be thinking of, I don't know what the right word is, but getting rid of like the upper management of both.
That would have to be something that is probably worked in a contract with the sheriff's department. I would hope they would.
I mean, the idea, I would think some of the idea is saving money for the community. Okay, that's all the questions that I had.
I could speak to that too, Madam Mayor. I can see. I can see that Sheriff Colvard is in attendance tonight, and I've had several discussions with him, and he had said that there's a need for certified officers, and if we did move forward with this process, that most, if not all, of the current officers would still have a job. So it's difficult to find certified officers, and it's important to keep the ones that we have.
Okay, thank you.
Jim?
My name's Jim Berg. I'm a city resident. I was police chief here from 1996 to 2001. Excuse me. This is a public safety matter, as was mentioned earlier. It's up to the governing body, government, to provide the safety. That's what you're elected to do. The 24-hour police department is public safety. You can't recruit and retain police officers when every 6 months to a year, they don't know whether they're gonna have a job, whether they're gonna be absorbed into the sheriff's department or not. We have a new chief. Give that chief a chance to recruit some officers and train them and retain them. The sheriff says he'll do whatever the community wants him to do. That's fair enough. But that's also gonna cost money. We aren't gonna save much money. I can't see the county commissioners wanting to take on all the responsibility and the cost of new officers or retaining the officers we have. Like I say, this is a public safety matter. We have a good fire department. We're currently working on ambulance service, the way I understand it, at any rate, and a 24-hour police department goes with it. Now keep in mind that if this sheriff and the county commissioners go along with this and think it's a great idea and it all works well, that doesn't say anything for the next sheriff and the next group of county commissioners. They can do what they darn well please. If they decide not to have an SRO, they can do that. If they decide not to have 24-hour protection, they can do that. There is no going back. This is it. This is for the marbles. If you go with the sheriff's department now, and the next sheriff decides he's not going to enforce ordinances, he's not going to do this or he's not going to do that, you're stuck with it because you've already committed, and you can't go back. It's too expensive. So keep that in mind. This is a once and for all deal, and this should be put to bed once and for all, as opposed to every 6 months to a year, somebody brings it up again, and the officers don't know whether they got a job, and the public doesn't know whether they got a police department. So, thank you.
Madam Mayor, members of the council, Ed Wagner, I'm a county commissioner. I'm here tonight, I'm not speaking on behalf of the county commissioners. It has not been discussed once in an open meeting at our county commissioners or been on our agenda. I'm here tonight, I'm gonna make a statement or two. I'm not here as a resident of the city, I'm not here as a resident of the county. I'm here as a resident of this community we live in. One thing I want to elaborate on is I've lived here for 31 years. We're just coming out of a dispatch that it's water under the bridge. It can be one way or the other. Do we as a community want to get back into another situation where that might happen? I'm here to gather information. I'm not speaking for or against. We just got done with the Joint Powers Board for the dispatch. If the city if it moves forward to a countywide, our Joint Powers Board for the dispatch will have to be redone because there's a member of that board from the city. So I'm just not here to make waves, I'm just here to gather information, but there's two things I want everybody to think about. That's all. Ask some standard questions from the council, various things.
Thanks, Ed. Donnie Stason, council. And that was one thing that I was gonna have to look into was the board that just got created on what that was gonna disrupt, with that change.
And I don't know exactly where that would go, but it would have to be addressed with something. So that's my statement I wanted to make tonight is just move forward with caution, like Mr. Bird said. Once it's done, it might be done forever, and it might not be a happy outcome. Thank you.
Anyone else like to come up?
Madam Mayor and Council, my name is Greg James, for those who may not know me. A few points I would like to address this evening. First of all, there is no advantage whatsoever to the citizens of Newcastle from a law enforcement standpoint by doing away with the police department, none whatsoever. Second of all, as I understand, currently under operation, we lose the 24-hour on-duty coverage. The sheriff and his department does provide 24-hour on-call, but that's not at all the same as 24-hour on-duty coverage. The comment about, that was in the paper about only raising $23,000 through fines and other things is really kind of silly from the standpoint that the police department is never intended to be a revenue-generating department. In any city or town that you find it is, you'll find a tremendous uproar against that because you're dealing with quotas and speed traps and everything else. Unless I misunderstand some things, the county would be statutorily required to provide service without any compensation from the city. Another factor is that the city residents would lose ordinance enforcement because the county sheriff is not required to enforce municipal ordinances. Another point that has been touched on briefly is that you can't hire and fire a sheriff. There's no provision of state recall unless there's some malfeasance going on, something illegal. You cannot hire or fire a sheriff as you can a police chief. I would leave those things for your consideration. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
My name is Jamie Jorgensen. I'm a relatively new resident of Newcastle. I've been here a year. Just a little bit of my background so you know where I'm coming from with what I'm going to say. I'm honorably retired out of Nevada Department of Public Safety. Spent most of my career Highway Patrol Division. I've worked urban, rural, investigations, and internal auditing. I would like to reiterate the comment about generating revenue. The quota. That is creating a quota system. You don't want to do anything to detract from the integrity of your police department. And the moment that you insist that they fill your city coffers, you're taking away any ounce of integrity they have in the community, not to mention illegal. In that same article where quotas was mentioned, staffing issues were also brought up. I'm simply going to put this bluntly, welcome to policing in America 2023. There's not a department in this country that can find personnel. People don't want to work law enforcement because of the political environment. And it's dangerous. More importantly, I'm scratching my head. I'm a newcomer to the community, so I don't know a lot of the history. I'm sitting here scratching my head. How in the world we can be having this discussion about disbanding the police department? No disrespect to the sheriff or anyone else, the council, nothing. How can you have an intelligent conversation about which one is better for the community when you provide absolutely no statistical data to support one way or the other? Based on my limited knowledge, there hasn't been, if at all, any good performance measures that have been established throughout the department. There's a great deal of things that law enforcement does that the community never, ever, ever hears about. They don't know a lot of what law enforcement does because they can't. Law enforcement can't sit and tell you everything that they do. But there's a lot of things that they can tell you that isn't being shared with the community. If the community doesn't know the work product that's being done, how can they make an informed decision about which way to go either way? Same thing with the sheriff's department. There's nothing on any of the websites or anything else. I know I didn't do any research prior to coming in here and saying, give me your stats. How many calls of service do you have? Average daily, how many square miles, lane miles, linear miles, population density. There's so many factors that go into all of this that aren't even brought to the table. This isn't, forgive me for being blunt, this isn't a logical discussion, it's an emotional one. So, if we can't sit down and have a logical discussion based on data and performance, I'm not discounting anybody's complaints about the way policing's been done up to this point. I don't mean to demean anybody's feelings, but because the community has to support their law enforcement, it has to be a part of it. But, and law enforcement has to adapt to their needs. So if they have a complaint, law enforcement needs to be able to address that complaint, adapt to it. So the two work hand in hand. So if the police department's failing enough that the community is so upset that they want to disband it, why? What do we do about it? Do we just disband the police department and never solve the problem or even look at it? Which is what this sounds like to me. Again, I'm an outsider looking in. But it looks like and sounds like, well, the police department's been a big problem. We can't find staff. We don't want to deal with it. Let's give it to the sheriff. Let's make it his problem. Nothing's being addressed. How can we sit here and make a logical decision with no information? I'm scratching my head at this one, guys. I really am. And I don't mean any disrespect to anyone. Like I said, I'm new to the community, but I'm looking at this from my experience, all those years I did, and I did supervision management as well, and it doesn't make sense. In today's day and age, with what's going on in our society, it's not the time to be looking at disbanding the police department and moving away from 24-hour policing. Most of my career, I worked rural. I was district commander for a rural section of the state of Nevada that covered 2 districts 90 miles apart. When I got assigned that, I was allocated 8 people. I had 2. We operated on a call-out basis all the time. It can be done. It's very costly in overtime. It's very difficult for your staff. They get overworked real easy, and law enforcement can be quite challenging at times and exhausting. And sometimes response times can be quite lengthy. So it's not the most ideal approach to 24-hour policing. But kind of to summarize, I can go on and on and on and start discussing performance measures and breaking down the hours potentially worked throughout the year and hours in the day and what the officers do. I'm happy to discuss this with you outside of this venue to give you some different ideas on how to look at your community reporting. Communication is poor in this town. It really is poor. Law enforcement doesn't communicate well with the community. And from what I'm getting, there's not good communication from the community to law enforcement. And I realize the department's been fraught with personnel issues as of late. So, but out of anything that you guys do, I sure hope you don't disband at this point, because it would be basically beating your head against the wall and accomplishing nothing. you're passing the problem off to someone else and not dealing with anything. But if you get anything out of this, what I've had to say tonight, is engage with your community. Pam, you do a fairly good job letting the community know on the Facebook page for Newcastle, and you tell people what the crew's doing on it. This is their schedule. That is the type of stuff that should be done with your police department. Right there. Hey, we had all these calls, we had this going on, we had that going on, we had 12 domestics last week, and that's unheard of. Whatever it may be, I can go into way in depth with this, but you have to educate the community on what the guys in the uniform and gals in the uniform do. That public communication has to be there, and it doesn't exist here. How can you be happy with your police department if you don't know what they're doing? This is just passing a problem off to someone else. It's absurd to try to even attempt it right now until you actually establish reasonable performance measures. And I would like to see a comparison between the two. What job is the police department doing? Types of calls for service, follow-up investigations, so on and so forth, and compare it to the sheriff's department. Not to be competitive or to make one look bad, but if you're going to say, it's trying to figure out which is going to provide the best service to the community either way. And if one's not meeting up to a standard, start looking at why. What do we do to fix it? It's problem solving 101. You got to brainstorm this stuff and figure it out.
I appreciate that, Jamie. We do have city council meetings twice a month where our police chief does give calls for service and a little bit of an update on what's happening with the police department. And I know the newsletter journal does record those live on Facebook and then puts it on YouTube. And then, but they are the first and the third Monday of every month at 7 p.m., depending on holiday. But we do, the police chief does provide quite a bit of information at those meetings.
You need to do a better job getting that.
Okay, the police chief and I can talk about that, or the council and the police committee can talk about it.
This is where it's at. Put it on your website.
Yep. They have a Facebook page as well. Okay.
Yeah, communication's not very good.
Well, we'll do our best to increase that, so thank you. Anyone?
There's all kinds of questions, but the main question is, do our citizens want this? So let's have a town hall.
And there's more to it than that.
There's a lot more to it.
But we've seen it's sort of been a perfect storm. After the newspaper, me primarily suggested a few years ago, the conversation needed to be had. Everybody thought I was saying the move needed to be made. And even if you make the move, you're talking about, I think, realistically, probably a 2 to 4 year transition. You know, a lot of the people who talk about, people's jobs and everything, this isn't something you do overnight. Even I think when you decide to do it, what you do is you start a clock. Hell, we've seen shifting from city landfills to regional landfills takes 2 decades, for crying out loud. I don't think it should take that long. That's ridiculous. But
Madam Mayor, Council, my name is William Curley. First, I want to thank you for having the meeting and being willing to listen to many different viewpoints. I myself prefer peacekeeping approach to law enforcement approach. Constitutional sheriff control to appointed police control. I live in the city. I'm perfectly willing if matters are properly negotiated, and it actually saves money both for the county and the city, that we end up with a unified law enforcement system akin to what they have in Custer County, akin to Sweetwater County, Wyoming, akin to Crook County, Wyoming with Sundance. We know it can be done by people who like our communities and done well. Now, I've heard several speakers talk about pitfalls they foresee if we go to unified law enforcement. I would like to let everyone keep in mind, please, that anything to be done would be subject to negotiation, to contracts between county, sheriff's office, city. They're not just, if anything's to be done, just at the spur of the moment. Money has come up, and rightfully so. Cost of living in the city spirals. People are concerned about that, and they wonder what services really need funding. I like being able to drink the water I get without getting sick, for example. So is there a way to save money? I don't have the answer. I hope the council and the commissioners and the sheriff's office look into that in good faith. I'd like to also, let me comment on this. I've heard the argument tonight that the chief can be gotten rid of. Not the exact words, but that was the thought. And the sheriff can't. That's not true. The chief can be gotten rid of by the council, but the sheriff can be gotten rid of by the people who get to vote to retain the sheriff or not, to elect the sheriff to office or not. And I prefer to have a direct vote than to have my council representative maybe think I'll vote Curley's position, maybe I'll vote his neighbors. I'd just rather have a vote, and I can do that with the sheriff. County residents include city residents. All of us city people are county residents. It's our sheriff's office. I'd like to see better use made of it. And lastly, let me comment on, based on experience in the courts of the county. No matter what happens, money needs to be increased for training for law enforcement. Many cases come to an end, never make it to court, never make it past the attorney's desk, prosecutor's desk, because matters are not well handled. Some of that's money, some of that's bad luck, and a lot of it's a lack of training. Training with rape victims, training with elder abuse, training with arson investigation, etc., etc., etc. I know, I have some experience with public government that it's hard to find money for training, but whatever you end up doing for law enforcement in this county and city, I strongly urge we invest more in training. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Curley. Is there anyone else?
Good evening, council members. For those that don't know me, my name is Eric Kaczynski. I've been a law enforcement officer in the county in the past for 13 years. I worked for both the city and the sheriff's office. And I enjoy working at both of those places, just so you know. I'm not here to pass any kind of sway one way or the other. That's between the two government entities to figure out for themselves based upon the public's interest. But I do have this comment. I'm here tonight because I saw a newspaper article that said, come to this meeting and hear about the pros and cons about this. I came in 2 minutes late, and there was already a discussion, somebody up here talking. So where are the pros and cons? Because you have a group of audience here that are asking all these questions, and they wouldn't be even asking them if you guys had provided some information as far as what those pros and cons are. Where's the slideshow? Where's the stats that this lady here mentioned? Okay, so as far as this meeting is concerned, I have a feeling more people are going to leave here more confused than getting any answers by being here, because there's no presentation on your guys' part. You guys are running the department. If you want to disband it, give us the reasons why. Again, I'm not a city resident, but I'm a concerned citizen. I've got, my heart and blood is in law enforcement all those years. So I think maybe you got the cart before the horse here in this situation, without having all the stats that were asked about. Number of citations issued, school fund issues, how much money's coming in, how much money's not coming in. Does the police department do more citation, do they do more than the sheriff's office currently? And if things were to change, how would that be affected? And all those kinds of stats as far as this actual expense to the city and the savings to the city, both directions. So those are my concerns, my thoughts. So I'm a little disappointed that we're not getting to hear that. Hopefully maybe you guys can do something different.
We do have some of those stats with us, if you would like to.
Well, I think it'd be better for somebody to stand up and tell us what they are so that you eliminate all these questions and concerns. You're taking concerns from people and you haven't even addressed what the pros and cons are in your guys' mind. You're the governing body, so let's lead.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you.
So for those who are wondering, when it comes to calls for service, from January 1st to the present date, Weston County Sheriff's Office has had 2,087 calls. And year-to-date for the police department is 2,728 calls. I know traffic stops were brought up. Traffic stops for in city limits was 558 from the police department. Traffic stops for the sheriff's department is 271. But we do have all the information in regards to types of calls for service up here if you're wanting to know. For example, in the last 6 months, there was 132 animal at-large calls in 6 months in the city limits, and that is a municipality ordinance that we don't know if the sheriff's department would take on. If we were to do, it would have to be in negotiations with the contract, or the city would have to spend money on hiring a community service officer in that regard. Is there any other questions when it comes to calls for service?
I'm Barbara Crow. I guess I'm very naive. I don't know if we're talking about just eliminating the police department and what the police department does wouldn't get done. I thought we were talking about merging the two and the duties of the two, so that the combined law enforcement, not county, not city, but combined, would then do the duties that are being done now. I didn't realize that we were talking about eliminating the city police and the duties that the city police does. In that case, it is an emotional issue, and none of us would want that to happen. I mean, if there's a biting dog on your street, you want somebody to come and rescue you. But is it a question of merger, or is it a question of elimination? I think we're back to basics, and I don't think that's been answered. And that makes it an emotional question. A few people have talked about being reasonable. about this, but most people are talking about it as an emotional thing. Do you like the police department? Do you want your own police department, or do you want county and city together?
Thank you. It wouldn't be a merger. It would be either county law enforcement or county and city law enforcement. So I hope that answers your question there.
I'd like to respond to
I did speak, I did have some questions with Sheriff earlier, and we did talk about manning the city 24/7. He said that would have to be something negotiated in the contract if that's what we wanted. We asked about enforcing the municipality ordinances. He prefers not to, and that's where it came up with the discussion of the city would have to get their own CSO. We asked if he would assign a deputy to patrol in the Newcastle City limits. He said that would have to be like in our contract. I asked if, because he does have some deputies that do live outside of Weston County, if he would still allow for his deputies to reside outside of Weston County, and I believe that was a yes. I don't know if he's still here. We asked if he would maintain the SRO position, and he said yes. We talked about the Joint Powers Board, but Mr. Chairman Wagner answered that one. And then we asked about, would you keep responding to medical calls? And he did say that they have started doing that, so that's excellent for all of us. And the other question I asked him was, where would the money come from? And he said that it was going to cost him $600,000. We would have to see what the contract would be on that. And then Councilman Owens has a response for you, Mrs. Crowe.
Thank you. So I advocated for this meeting tonight because I wanted to represent my constituents. They came to me and asked me, hey, now's the time. We'd like to move to county policing, right? I've contacted Sublette County. Sublette County has memorandums of understanding with the 3 incorporated towns in their county for law enforcement presence. A lot of the concerns that have been brought up tonight are things that can be addressed by a well drawn out contract for service or a memorandum of understanding. There's been counties around us that have done something similar. Some of the things that came up too while I was researching this topic were, hey, do we pay a lump sum as a municipality to the sheriff's department for this coverage, or is it something that's assessed in taxes? Sublette County, the contract for service for each of their municipalities was $10. $10 is what they were paying for paying the sheriff's department. But then I laughed about that and I said, well, I think it's crazy that you're just paying, or they're paying you $10. And he said, well, that's because all of the houses in that municipality are given a 1.8% tax on their taxable property. So nobody wants to see taxes raised, right? But that was an option, or it was paying a lump sum to the county so that they could have money for wages for the extra staff, and then it could kind of fit the bill there. But also a contract would line out things like 24-hour coverage and things of that nature. Sublette County has a school resources officer. They've been doing it since the mid-1980s. They've just had the sheriff handling the law enforcement in their county. Crook County, they're more recent. I think it's been the last few years that they've been doing it. Sundance pays a lump sum for the service. I've also, talked to some communities in South Dakota. Some of them said that it was the best thing that they ever did. Because you're just talking, right now, you're just talking about people changing uniforms and keeping their job. We're not talking about, just getting rid of everybody and disbanding the police department. We're talking about still trying to maintain a level of service that we're all comfortable with, but in the process maybe saving on that $1.5 million line item on our budget. And I understand that it's a service, right? My dad was the chief of police here in town for I think 8 years. I've always been a big advocate for our police department, but I'm doing my due diligence and I'm looking into this matter. And I think there's some misconceptions. I talked to a lady the other night. She said, well, the reason that I don't think this is a good idea is because the response time from the county to the city is just going to be too great, and terrible things are going to happen, right? Well, if there's a good contract or service or memorandum of understanding, then that would negate that concern, because you would have people staffed here 24 hours a day, if we were able to negotiate that contract, and then that's a moot point. But I've also talked to some communities that said that this idea was the worst one they ever had, and that if you don't have a good solid sheriff that's in charge, or if the people don't want it, or there's a myriad of other things that can cause problems with this process, right? If you don't have a solid sheriff, then this community was in South Dakota. They had a sheriff that didn't really want it. It was imposed upon him. Then they ended up having a spike in crime. They had problems, right? But this is all things that maybe could be negotiated in the planning process and looked at. But right now it isn't like you're just getting rid of the police department. It's just an idea that was brought on by people coming to me and wanting me to bring up the ugly question. So that's what prompted this meeting tonight.
Go ahead.
Okay. Can you hear me okay? Mr. Mayor, City Council, I'm Bruce Perkins. Of course, everybody knows I own Perkins Tavern. 17 years. I've had a lot of interaction with the police and the sheriff's department over that time. Good cops, bad cops. Everybody's got their share. But the thing was always constant. They were there when you needed them over the years. I don't care if it's 4 o'clock in the morning, me driving home. I see them patrolling the neighborhood. Make me feel good. Or all of a sudden I get called in because there's a bar fight. So I'm hauling ass to the bar, calling the police department at the same time. They're there before I am. I've had them run across the street. They're that close. But who's there? City police. Good times, bad times, they were always there. And I remember this same subject happened 6-7 years ago when Owens was police chief, Greg James, mayor, I believe at the time. Same thing. Do away with the police department. Turn it over to the county. County, we've got it, like Custer County can do it. Other counties can do it. Why can't we? The thing is, back then, it was a budget issue. Same thing it is now. Budget issue. Everything else is minor to that. Budget. Can you afford it? Yes, we can afford it. Because you know why? We want the comfort, we want the security, and we want the ability, all right, of the police department to be there. And our ability to control the police department. That's always been there. Doing good or doing bad, either way, they're there. And I like to see them stay there. Basically, for the security of the town, security of the businesses. Because if they leave, the service we get from policing will drop. I don't care what kind of contracts you're gonna have with the sheriff, understandings, all that can change. Just give it time. One instance, all right, well, we're not doing this anymore. For another instance, oh, we're not doing this anymore. City ordinances, they don't have to. Even if they have an agreement to do it, they still don't have to do it. All right, we want somebody who's gonna, I said, enforce the laws that we do have on the books, because they're there for our safety. All right, so I'm all in favor of keeping our police department, building it, bringing in the best officers you can, increase training, everything. They're part of our community and they need to stay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, City Council, for having this meeting. My name is Don Taylor. I'm a county commissioner. I'm not going to voice my opinion personally about this, but I think it's fair to say that we keep talking about lines, well, what I would call lines in the sand. We separated the police departments, the sheriff and the police department at one point because we couldn't get along. There was too much internal bickering, so for lack of a better word, they divorced. We got a new police, the police moved out of the law enforcement center. That's within the city of Newcastle. The thing that I would ask is that you look at it in totality, the big picture. Why does it have to be we would lose officers? Why does it have to be less enforcement? Why can't it be, for example, if it becomes the whole county, why can't it become shift work where you have full coverage? I don't have all the answers for it. As a county commissioner, I'm speaking only for myself. But the question isn't whether they're good officers or the sheriff's department's a bad unit and the police are good or they're bad. That doesn't matter. What matters is can we provide a better service? We just went through this with dispatch. There was elected individuals here at one time that wanted 2 dispatches. Was that economical? No, it was never economical. I'm not saying that there's not going to be bumps in the road, and we could say we've always had the police department, and maybe we should keep it. But I think it's worth sitting down in a productive environment, not an argument where a line's drawn in the sand, and saying, how can we make it more efficient? Whether that means making it more efficient, keeping the police force, or that means making it more efficient by combining the two and calling it a county sheriff's department. There's a lot of things that we have on our plate right now concerning economics. Now, there's people here that go, well, we can afford it. Well, can we afford an ambulance district? And can we afford new dispatch and a separate dispatch center? And can we afford to, I don't, looking at it as a county commissioner, I look at the budget all the time. I don't know that we can. How many of you would like a tax increase to pay for some of this stuff? We have a lot of taxes that we pay already. Times are tough, things are tight. By no means am I suggesting that we put the community at risk or have a safety issue, but it needs to be discussed in a reasonable fashion and what can be made economically efficient. Do I personally believe that money can be saved? Probably in some areas. I think that it can be saved and have an increased police force. But I also believe that training is important, and I believe that it needs to be given a chance, not just assume that police are going to lose all their jobs. There's not going to be anybody on the streets. I believe the police department's located in the same place that the sheriff is. So why would there be a drop in service? There could be, but why would there be? And that's stuff that you work out when you're sitting down together as a community going, okay, we've always done it this way, so it can't be anything different. I called Custer today, and Custer said they wouldn't change to a sheriff's, or they would take it back if they could to go back to a police force. But I called Sundance today too, and they said they won't change back. They should have done it a long time ago. So there's many different opinions, and there's reasons why communities do certain things. I would ask that you guys look at it not by that police officer's my friend, or that sheriff's my friend, or this is the city and we want to have control over it and the county just wants control over it. I would ask you to look at it in a neutral fashion saying, is it possible that we can do it better? We're already questioning our ambulance service. Can we do it better? But can we afford to go into our own ambulance district? I don't know, but I'm just asking the community to look at it reasonably, not with emotions, and not who's my friend and who they know on city council that says it's a terrible thing, and who they know on city council or the commissioner that says it's a great thing. It needs to be looked at. It's been a problem. It's been a problem where they wouldn't have moved the police and the law enforcement. This has been a problem for many years here. So there's got to be a better way, is my opinion. Thank you.
In addition to the weekly printed version of the newsletter journal, we also promote our community and share important information on our award-winning website, newslj.com, and in our weekly email newsletter, Nuke Now. We also connect with readers through various social media platforms and invite you to check us out on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. You can even take a look at a recent meeting of the City Council, School Board, or County Commission on our YouTube channel. We do hope that you will go to newslj.com and subscribe today, and we look forward to making all of our great content available to you. But regardless of your level of support, we thank you from the bottom of our hearts for doing your part to preserve a free and independent local press.
Madam Mayor, members of the council, Chris Kenny. First of all, I'm the assistant fire chief, and I've worked with these folks for 20 years. And the service that they provide us when we get on scene is invaluable. That's not to say that Sheriff Colhart and his deputies wouldn't provide that same type of service. Work with them along the road on various scenes, and they're as professional as our city police. But the question that I have is, I've done some research, and Councilman Owens kind of touched on it a little bit already, and I'd like to direct this question towards him if I could. The citizens, we'll call them, that you've had coming to you, is this more of a budget-driven, that they want to see money going back to maybe fixing roads or something?
Some of that has come up, yeah. And then some of it is they don't like the level of coverage that they're receiving right now with some of the turmoil that we've had with our police department over the last couple of years. But yeah, both of them have come up. And then this question came up immediately after I was elected to the city council. And I did some research on it back then, but my heart wasn't in it at that point. I want to see our police department succeed. But then in the recent history, there's been a lot of things that have happened that, and people have started to come forward. And so it's something that I've looked at again because of the volume of people that have come in. And a lot of it is budget driven, yeah.
So have you looked at this at all to see how much the city is going to save if we do go to a countywide policing? I know right now the city has a $1.5 million budget. What is this going to save the city?
That's a question that would need to be addressed as things move forward in the negotiation process. But, one of the numbers that's been rolling around is half. Say the city could save half of that $1.5 million budget by providing, supplementary funds for wages through a contract for service. This is all just theoretical, right? Looking at what other communities have done. But, just throw that out there. What if we could save half of our budget? Would that be a positive thing and still maintain the level of coverage?
Well, I've kind of done my due diligence as well. I was at the last city council meeting when you spoke about Suffolk County, and I went on and did some research. And in fact, you are correct that 3 towns in Suffolk County pay $10 a year for coverage.
Yeah.
but I've also looked at what the citizens of Sublette County pay for mills. And I've looked to see what the top assessed value for the taxpayer in Sublette County is. Do you know what that is?
No, I don't.
That is $973 million. That's a lot of tax money going back into that county. Their county sheriff has an $8 million budget. Pretty easy for him to say, yeah, I think we can do this. Do you think Sheriff Colbard can do that?
This has been a problem in our county forever, is, our low population, the fact that we're a bedroom community and we don't receive a lot of the funding that a lot of other counties receive. So, no, I don't think that we're going to end up with an $8 million budget.
So, with the Joint Powers Board, that took how much money out of the budget? Is going to take how much money out of the budget?
So forgive me, I'm Derek Thompson. I'm your newly appointed chief of police, and I don't like sitting down. I want to talk to people, so I'm going to stand. The Joint Powers Board, I can't give you the exact number, Mr. Kenny, but it's somewhere between $360,000 and $370,000 that the city pays to the Joint Powers Board. Now that's going to come out of the police department budget. So you have a current $1.511 million budget, and I'm going to go out on a limb here and agree with Mr. Jorgensen and agree with Mr. Dudzinski that you guys need some numbers to make an educated decision. And our budget right now, including running a dispatch center, paying for dispatch equipment, all that stuff, is $1.511 million a year. That's including, in that budget, there used to be an information technology person and those types of things that we no longer have. So you cut out I think it's $367,000 a year that goes to the Joint Powers Board. So you can take that off the top of our budget. So now we're down to $1.1 something million a year. On top of that, Councilman Butts had me run some numbers for this particular meeting, and running 8 officers a year with what I projected to be a fairly comfortable budget. That's with no support staff, that's no administrative assistant, no IT person, none of that. And there's a tremendous amount of IT stuff that goes into this, but we found a little cheaper way to do that. That budget came out to be, I think it was $972,000 a year. So that's about where we will be at once we no longer run a dispatch center and once we've cut some other things out. That's kind of where I project to be at. That's running, if we were full staff, we would have myself, a sergeant, an investigator, a school resource officer, and 4 patrol officers. So that's about the money I believe we would be spending, and that's the staff that we would have on hand to provide that. I don't know if that helps you any, but that's kind of where I think we're going to be at.
It does, and that's kind of what I had looked at as well, looking at the city budget. So if we're looking at 1.1, Councilman Owens, you're saying negotiated maybe half of that. So, okay, we say it's 500,000, 600,000, right? And if we can't get it negotiated to where they take on the city ordinance, those city ordinances still have to be enforced. So you'd have to look at having public service officer or officers, right? So depending on what you pay there, what are you actually gaining budget-wise by getting rid of this? Really not a whole lot. If you're looking at fixing streets, there's no money left to fix streets by doing this. So if that's the driving factor, I don't see it.
To answer, so personally, I was just doing my due diligence to figure out what other communities that have county policing are doing and how they're able to do it. Do I think that we're going to save a whole pile of money and we're going to be able to go and start repairing roads all over town? I don't know. I don't know how much money we're going to free up. Sublette County has, 8 or 9 or maybe 10 unincorporated towns that, you know, are providing a tax base for that county. So, I mean, I'm sure that their population is way bigger than ours. One of the things that they do, in my conversation with the Sublette County Sheriff, was they have community service officers in all of the incorporated municipalities that take care of ordinance. One of the things that's addressed in their contract for service is that the sheriff is not going to enforce any ordinances that are contrary to the state constitution. So what they do is they provide support for the community service officers if they are responding to something that there's an arrestable offense, and they have a good rapport with the community service officers and all the councils in that county. So that's how they address it, and that's just some of the information that I gleaned by looking into this.
So by doing your due diligence, how did you pick Sublette County to compare to Weston County?
Well, basically to answer your question, Chris, I just contacted them because they had county policing. I didn't compare demographics. I didn't compare budgets. I didn't do any of that stuff. I just called and talked to the sheriff, called all the county or city clerks in the incorporated towns, had them provide their contract for service, and then I had a conversation with Casey Lear, their sheriff, and I just discussed with him, you know, how they handled it in his county.
Well, I guess I'm disappointed in your due diligence. I think you could have picked a county a little bit closer to what represents Weston County, and that'd be our county to the north. But they do county policing as well. Sundance just went through this, and I have family that lives up there, and I know that there's some of them that said, I wish they would have never done that, because they see nuisance calls and these other calls and calls for service have increased.
I also got the contract for service from Crook County as well. And then, you know, just as somebody else at the podium earlier said, you know, there's people that are pleased with the level of coverage that they're getting. And then, you know, then I didn't want to compare South Dakota counties because we're Wyoming, right? So I didn't do a lot over there, but I had in the past. And, you know, like I said before, I mean, some folks were pleased with the level of service that they got. And then, you know, some other towns, they weren't pleased with the level of service that they got, and they weren't pleased with the savings, you know. So I mean, while you were doing your due diligence before this meeting, did you look at any other counties that I may have missed? Can you provide any other information?
I pulled the town of Lusk's budget. I pulled Moorcroft, Sundance, so I know what they pay for service to Crook County. I know what Crook County's budget is. I've looked at Custer County, and again, I've talked to some folks in Custer that have been there for a number of years, and they said that they wish they could go back, but as it was said earlier, is once this is gone, to try to get our police force back is going to be near impossible, especially in the times that we're in right now. Budget-wise, it just will not happen. Like I said, I have family in Sundance, and I know that they are not very happy with some of the calls for service that they're seeing up there. And again, I have the utmost respect for Sheriff Colbert and his team, and I've worked with Chief Thompson and his team on both phenomenal groups. But I think if we're going to sit here and try to compare apples to apples, it needs to be apples to apples, and I'm not sure why we're looking at Sublette County.
Well, you have a valid point. I mean, I didn't get into the weeds on their budget, how many counties they even had, until I had the conversation with the sheriff. And, you know, everybody just seemed to be pleased with how it's handled there. And then, I had heard that people in Sundance were pleased with the level of service they got, but it doesn't sound like that's the same experience that you have. So I think it varies depending on who you talk to.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is James Rose. I am a citizen of Newcastle. We've lived here for about 10.5 years now. I have spent my entire law enforcement career here in Weston and Crook County. I'm a state trooper, and I am the sole Newcastle state trooper. So just a couple of comments, not necessarily questions, but a couple of concerns that I have. I've heard people say that the police department is not generating enough revenue to justify having a police department, and it's already been addressed, but I want to readdress it. Looking at law enforcement as a revenue generator is the way to corruption. It happens. I've lived in towns in Texas where that happened, and everybody hated the police department because it was solely for generating money for the town. And so it will lead to corruption. The purpose of fines, whether it's motor vehicle law or criminal law, is to change behavior, and that's it. We don't write tickets because we want to create money. We write tickets because that is the best way to change a behavior that needs to be corrected. And then the other thing that I've heard is that they're having a hard time getting police officers. And that is a law enforcement problem nationwide. In the Highway Patrol, we have 176 road positions for the state of Wyoming, and we are 52 short. We have tremendous resources as far as our equipment, everything that we get. The amount that they pay us is among the top in the state, and yet we can't even hire people. So the sheriff's office, the police department, everybody's going to have that problem. And as a state trooper, I cover about 5,500 square miles. There are times when I'm more than 2.5 hours away from my home. And the shield that is on the chief's vest is protection of my family. It allows me to do my job when I'm far away from home, to know that all I have to do is make a phone call, and within minutes, there's people there to help my family. So I think that our police, in my opinion, our police department has been in a very good direction. And I would really dislike to see that change. I want to say that there are only 3 other law enforcement officers in Weston County that have more experience than me. One of them is Sheriff Colbert, has been on a lot longer than I have. Another one is a fellow trooper that lives in Upton, and then Chief Thompson. And when I first hired on, Chief Thompson was one of the driving forces to help me become a better law enforcement officer. And so the fact that he is now in the head seat for this department gives me a lot of optimism and hope. So just a couple of comments on that. I like the direction that we're going, and I would dislike to see a change from that direction that we're currently headed.
Thank you.
Hello, I'm Wayne Rooney, and I'd like to address this. I'd like to see the police department keep going. I've known Derek Thompson for 15 years. We worked with each other and against each other. And he's the best thing he's ever happened in Newcastle City. He only cares about the police department making it better. You hear the councilman talk about a lot of what ifs. What will have to be brought into the contract, what you're saving. Look what you have right now. You guys are heading in the right direction. It's a good direction. They talk about the police department, how many people there is. Right now, I don't know how many people are on the city police department, or how many's going to be on the county department. But I know how big this county is. Go clear over to Moorcroft, that's where the county line's at. Clear out by 40 miles out towards Coleman, 45 miles north. Be a long time getting somebody in town sometimes, and it's going to happen. I don't think it's going to help at all with the budget. You're already starting out so close, it's just going to keep going up if you want what you want. I didn't know the police department was supposed to be profit or loss. I thought it was protect and serve. My only question after that is, what's next? The fire department? Yeah, keep cutting services.
Thank you. Is there anyone else before?
I'm Deb Sewell. I lived in Weston County all my life, so I've seen a lot of things. I had a short span of time that I worked in the police department as a dispatcher, and it was nice to take care of the whole area. I was very disappointed when they decided they had to have 2 dispatches. That's twice the money, wouldn't you say? I don't say that it's a good thing. And then you have to hire more dispatchers, and it's hard to keep good dispatchers also. So I don't really understand why they had to split.
We have one dispatch. It's a joint powers board.
I don't understand that language. You're in 2 different buildings. Don't you have to, I'm not for sure where even to call anymore. You know, if you have emergency, I guess it's 0, and you hope you get to the right place, or and then trying to get through to a dispatcher, you go through all these numbers, and you can't, the last option is to talk to a dispatcher is the last thing to be reported, I think. I haven't called them lately, but, or the city, it's totally confusing. That's my concerns.
So I think there may be some confusion as far as what is in existence currently. There was a time where the city and the county were going to have their own dispatch centers. Since then, they've made amends, I guess you would say. And we now have what is called it's a very long name, it's the City of Newcastle, Town of Upton, County of Weston Joint Powers Communication Board. So it is one dispatch center. That dispatch center has actually not been stood up and fully operational yet. So everything is still dispatched through the city police department. I think what you're referring to is when you call the administrative line, which is 746-4486, you get a bunch of different options. Is that what you're referring to? Okay. Yeah. So if you need to speak to dispatch, this is a overly simplified way to answer your question, but it's all it is option 1. If you dial 4486, press option 1, you're going to get dispatch for the entire county.
And if you don't know that, you're sitting there listening and think like, oh my God, I'm going to have somebody die in the meantime.
Yeah. I hope if somebody's dying, you can call 911 and that will ring directly into dispatch. So
that's what I was going to say. I get tired of listening, so I dial 911. So there you go.
So, but yeah, the dispatch centers are not going to be separate. It's going to be one dispatch center, and that's actually its own entity. I don't know if you've been watching the news or any of that, but that problem has been resolved. So
I thought they were moving out of the building to another building.
The Joint Powers Board dispatchers will be in the building owned by the city, but it is just one dispatch for the whole county.
For the county, for the sheriff's department and fire department and everything?
Correct. If you have any type of emergency that requires fire, EMS, or law enforcement, it's all under one dispatch.
Well, that's nice to know. But I was gonna say, I try to listen to that stuff, and it's so confusing. It sounds like you're going your own separate ways, and you have these dispatchers over here, these dispatchers over there, and
No,
all split.
that's a thing of the past. That's,
Because I did go to some of the meetings, and that's
Yeah.
what it sounded like it was going to, and it's like, oh my God.
yeah, so the Joint Powers Board actually was just established, I forget the terminology, no one would have to help me, but it was just made official under the Attorney General's office, less than a month ago. So
Oh, just
it's a very new thing. So,
Okay, because I was in the meetings where they were talking about doing the Joint Powers Board and all that stuff. I was like, oh my God,
yeah.
this is terrible.
And we're at the point now where we're established and having public meetings to get things set up and running. So it will all stay under one dispatch center for the whole county.
Okay, well, thank you.
You're welcome.
That's good to know.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that would like to make a comment or ask a question?
On now. Good evening, I'm Danny Bow, and I want to congratulate everybody in this room that's here. This is what is supposed to happen. And to start off with, when I was walking in, a young man in this room named Lonnie Dickinson asked me, he said, "What are you doing here? This has nothing to do with county citizens." Well, it most certainly does, because whatever's decided in this room will have an effect on me, because my sheriff is going to be doing more work or whatever. So, every time I come to town, I fill up gas. And so what Newcastle does affects me. And I'm concerned about things like not being able to wash out your trailer because the yard hydrant hasn't been fixed in a year. But I haven't had nothing said here tonight about the quality of either deal. It's not that. And in defense for Mr. Owens, in the last meetings that the city council had, all he wanted was this meeting to see if the people wanted to find out if they could save money or not save money. So don't say you didn't do your due diligence. He's doing his due diligence. He got the city council to have this meeting. They're doing their due diligence. Why spend all the time and money that it will take? And every time is money. And that's why they did not have the answers that some of you asked tonight. But this wasn't a question and answer project. This was to find out if you want them to find the answers. It is a complicated deal. It is a big decision. But you can't just take one or two cherry-picked deals either way. But I'm telling you, as a concerned citizen, I can't hardly drive through Newcastle in my one-ton truck because the streets are so rough. And I understand the budget, and this is what's coming down. The biggest thing I've heard here tonight is, well, we want the service. Well, I don't care how good your service is. I'm going to tell you the truest thing you'll ever hear about 911. You dial 911 and you die. If you really need 911, if your life is in jeopardy, whether it's fire, criminal, whatever, if you are counting on 911 to save you, you're going to die. Because even if the cop is just one block away and the intruder steps in the door with a gun, he cannot save you. Self-preservation, self-responsibility has to start coming forward. You guys can kill the golden goose, and I don't care whether you're a fire department, police department, whatever. It all takes money. But the goose can only lay so many eggs. And we're going to have to start prioritizing as a county, because
We are all in this together. I don't care whether you live in Osage, Upton, or Newcastle. Everything affects everybody in this county. And so why not start looking? The question here tonight, as far as I was concerned, and the reason I came, is because they said come and put your input in, and they want to know, do we want to look into this? And if you say yes, I'm sure the city council will do their due diligence. It's not up to one council member. And if you do this, then I guarantee you some of the people in the county will get more involved. Right now, this is just he said, she said. We've done nothing. So the question here tonight is, there's been no due diligence. The question was, do we want to do due diligence? And I cannot believe that people in Weston County are so much richer than me that they don't think we need to look at saving money in certain spots and prioritizing the other way. So my comment is, I'd just like to know before the night's over if we can get a question of, do we want to proceed with this? It's not up to one councilman to do the due diligence. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello everybody, my name is John Droff, I'm a resident, and I'm not emotional. I've only lived here 2 years, and I probably know three people in this whole room, and maybe 1% of the population if I'm lucky. And I came here hoping to get answers, and I heard a lot of emotional opinions, and I didn't get any answers as to what I'm looking for. I'd like to make an informed decision about if I would like to keep the police department or if I would like to have the sheriffs come in, but I have no idea how many are coming in, and if you don't have a contract, how can we really? Sir, Commissioner, police commissioner, do all the police officers live in Newcastle?
No, sir. Not all the police officers live in the city limits of Newcastle.
Majority?
No.
Okay, now that was one of my concerns. If they live here, they care about here, and they want to do the job. And my concern is if sheriffs come in, well, you don't have no idea where they live. You know how, I don't believe they really care about Newcastle. But until I can get some of these questions answered in my mind, I can't really say what I want. It's just one person wants them, another person's been here 50 years. It's just not logical to me. You know? And I hope that we can have a discussion where the panel presents all this information to us so we can make a fair assessment in our own minds.
Do you have specific questions that we could possibly answer this evening?
No, you haven't got time.
Okay.
Thank you, everybody.
Okay, is there any other questions for the council or any statements that want to be made? Well, the council, like I said, we meet on November 6th. I'm sure this will be on our agenda to discuss some more. It's open to everyone, our meetings are. Once again, they're at 7 o'clock upstairs at the Newcastle City Hall. I do want to thank everyone for coming. It's very important to, not just myself, but this whole council, that we hear from, not just residents in Newcastle city limits, because as you stated, Mr. Rao, it is going to affect all of us, inside, outside city limits. So, but I do thank all of you. You're more than welcome to ask us any other questions at our next council meeting. Have a great night. Thank you.
sense.